And then for a year, I sat at a typewriter and wrote this book. I started out writing it for my kids and my grandkids. As I was writing it and reading it, I was seeing things for the first time.
Welcome to The Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world hearing their stories about growing a business. Today's guest invented the leisure suit in the 70s, and we're going to discuss what it takes to make something iconic. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Many have asked me what software I use to record such high quality video for this podcast. I use Riverside, and what's great about Riverside is it records the local camera feed from you and your guests around the world, which means crisp 4K video without having to worry about blurriness due to internet hiccups. Riverside is also a great editor, fitting with my philosophy of making it easy for yourself to create because there is nothing that your guests or you have to download. We also use Riverside's AI magic clips to find interesting moments for our episode intros. And I'm happy to announce that Riverside is sponsoring this episode. And if you sign up at creators.riverside.fm/creatorsadventure and use code creatorsadventure, you'll get 15% off. You can find the link in the episode description as well. Now back to the show. Hey everyone, we're here today with Jerry Rosengarten. He is a Brooklyn-born entrepreneur known for his knack of spotting opportunities in chaos. His business ventures range from developing dyslexia aid products to innovative real estate and early investments in solar energy. And Jerry first gained fame in the 1970s with the leisure suit, leading to major New York City projects like the Lofts and the Bowery Hotel. Today, he owns a large solar firm in the Northeast and is dedicated toward environmental stewardship and supporting those with learning disabilities. Jerry, welcome to the show.
My pleasure, Brian.
First question for you is, what would you say is the biggest thing either that you did or you are doing that helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
I think I built a medical building out of a loft building. I converted a medical building, a loft into a medical building. And that gave me what I call a drizzler. The drizzler, no one today knows what that means, but it was once a short jacket that a company called London Fog made. And they made it every day for years. And it covered the overhead of the company. And that's what you need if you're going to be in business. You need some sort of drizzler. The medical building was a drizzler.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. That same concept has helped me in my business, that having Heights Platform now, this software platform, I wouldn't have been able to build it the same way if I hadn't first built another business that was helping to fund that for me and allowing me to focus on creating this without having to worry about chasing investors and things like that.
It's kind of like essential, actually. Not saying people can't do it without that, but it kind of like gives you the presence of concentrating on that, what you want to do, as opposed to always worrying about, how you're going to pay the rent.
Yeah, it's really hard to have the same level of creativity and do the same things when you have to directly worry about tomorrow versus being able to think like a bigger picture, longer term.
Back in the 70s, that wasn't, at least for me, wasn't that true. Because I didn't get to the medical building until after a few projects that were very risky and I had no money. So it was the leisure suit. I didn't have any money to build that. So loft development, same thing. It seemed to evolve, and one business took on the next and the next and the next from an economic standpoint. So that's what happened.
Yeah, I want to get into all those things in more detail, but first, for those listening or watching, you've been battling with dyslexia your whole life, but that hasn't stopped you from getting going after what you wanted and making those dreams a reality, even though you were functionally unable to read until your 50s. So, would you go as far as to say that dealing with that condition actually helped push you further, or how did that interplay with all of your ventures in business?
I guess when I was young and I was considered dumb and all that stuff by peers, it was just, that was a push to get better than them, even though
Mm.
I didn't necessarily get better than them, but I did push to it. Um, I think it also helped me see things that wasn't there. Part of the way I've created stuff over the years is basically seeing things that aren't there, and seeing a need for those things. So then creating that. I mean, you really can't create. And I look, by the way, at myself as a designer more so than a businessman. It's important that people see what's needed, and that's how progress gets done. And one of the ways that happens is to design something into the future, which just wasn't done before.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I found with some of the things I've done creatively, I believe that it was either easier for me to get to that point or I did get to that point because I was willing to look at it from this like blank slate of not knowing the way that you're supposed to do it or the way that everybody talks about it and being able to look at it from this view of, well, I'm going to imagine this from nothing. What is the way I'm going to do it? Ignoring what everybody says you should do. And I think being able to approach things with that state of mind really helps you to come up better with these creative ideas. Is that what you're saying as well?
I am saying that. I'll give you an example, very good, very simple example, actually, because people will relate to it. Um, I bought Apple stock. I bought every Apple product ever made so far, except the goggles. Um, and I bought Apple stock. And I was told by all the people, I mean, all the people, to sell because it was going out of business. It wasn't going to survive.
Mm.
And I couldn't listen to any of them. And I held and held and held. So that's an example of not listening to
And
others.
that was when approximately that you first bought it.
When it first came on the market at the beginning. Well,
Oh, awesome.
I because maybe this is going back to the dyslexia part. I bought the Macintosh, the box, the original box, that small little, and it was the first time I could actually write a sentence that made sense. It didn't say it made sense
Mm.
the first time. I kept on changing, but eventually it made sense, and it was invigorating, and all the things I did there were so intuitive. So the learning process that I didn't get when I was in school because of the dyslexia, I was able to do these things here. And then I'm listening to, brokers and lawyers and all that telling me to sell. They never went through what I went through. They
Mm.
never see the magic of that box. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Could you share with us, was there a moment for you that you decided that you were first going to become an entrepreneur, or did you know that you were going to be an entrepreneur when you were younger?
no, I didn't know I was going to be an entrepreneur. All I know is I came from meager beginnings. So 2-bedroom apartment, 1 bath, about 5 of us in it. Um, it I knew I had to make money. I mean, I didn't finish school, um, so I wasn't going to have a profession. So what was left for me? And I went out and said I was going to make money. I had been working since I was 13 at different jobs. And most of those jobs were in the men's fashion business. So that's kind of like the lead up to the leisure suit. I worked in
Yeah,
retail
yeah. So
stores.
you're the creator of the leisure suit.
Right.
And for those listening who are not familiar with it, can you tell us first what is the leisure suit? And then what was behind like this design choice when you first came up with it in the 70s?
Well, as I said, I was working in two separate men's stores. One was in Flushing, Queens, and it kind of like catered to uh, beauticians, mobsters, whatever, but it was a small store and it carried very avant garde stuff. And the other store was on the Miracle Mile in Manhasset. And that was a very staid type of store. It was, lawyers and professionals came in and they bought their suits and ties and all that stuff. And that's what I saw. I saw the dichotomy between these two cultures. Um, and I didn't consciously think of the leisure suit. It evolved through working for a half-size dress house and a fabric producer, and then the leisure suit. And the leisure suit, when it was created, was actually a very good-looking product. And it was worn on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and a lot of other celebrities wore it. And then, like happens in business, and all businesses, I got knocked off, knocked off, knocked off, and knocked off. And when they knock you off, they cheapen the product. Plus, they don't
Hmm.
have the vision, so they cheapen the look. And before I was finished, it was a joke. The leisure suit still is to this day. When you mention it, people talk about it as something funny.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the competitor, I think it's something to be said there that a lot of early entrepreneurs, especially I know, worry about competition, but they worry about it from the sense of thinking that the competitor is just going to beat them if they make the same thing, but the competitor doesn't have your vision, so they're always going to be at best a step behind you, and maybe not ever able to create that exact same thing that you've created because they don't know why you did things a certain way.
Right. Well, again, the leisure suit was based on design, but the concept of the leisure suit was that men didn't have to be tied up in those three-piece suits. They could have something that was soft and didn't have, you know, shoulder pads and things of that nature, and they could feel very comfortable. And it kind of created, what was it? What was the term for the Fridays with relaxed Fridays or something, where people dressed casually.
Casual
Casual,
Friday.
yeah, casual
Yeah.
Fridays. So that was kind of like the concept of it. And I had 6 years of that.
Yeah, what I'm really curious, like I guess you hinted at it a little bit of that you saw the dichotomy there of the more like traditional, here's where I get my professional kind of uniform and here's the more like avant-garde style. But for somebody who is kind of beginning their journey, they haven't figured out how to create this hit like popular product yet. What would you suggest to them as far as how they can kind of be at the right time to figure out what is something they can do that would be really special to the current time right now that they can create?
I'm going to say one thing, and it's not going to be popular, but it's luck. Everything that
Okay.
happens in life happens at a time. And if you're there at that time and pick it up, that's luck, because these things don't pass together. as far as creating it, I think you first have to go with your passion. You have to look deep down. What is it that you really are passionate about? Because it's not really worth the fight unless you are. I mean, a lot of people get into jobs and they just day after day do the same thing. And that becomes their drizzler because that's their earning power. And they got locked into that. First, you have to work 24 hours a day. You can't work a 9 to 5 if you're an entrepreneur. Now, you can sleep and all this other stuff, you can eat, but you still got to think about what's happening
Yeah,
next.
your brain is always on about
Right.
it.
There's no rest. And the truth of the matter is that it is invigorating by itself. So you don't feel it. But, that's, at least that was the way it was for me.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that I've said before that money can't be the reason that you're doing something because eventually that's not going to be enough of a reason for you to continue with it. There's got to be this passion and strong desire to work on it. And like you said, it's going to always kind of be occupying your mind, and it it should be a good thing that you're enjoying that because that's what will allow you to continue to pursue it, continue to improve on it, and also help lead to your fulfillment in what you're improving in your life.
I agree. I agree.
So yeah, you mentioned that you're saying luck about the some of what you created there, but I would say that you created some of your own luck because you were taking action on these ideas that you had, and some people are not creating that luck for themselves because they maybe have some glimpses of certain ideas, but they don't follow through with them. And I would say it's important to try those things and create your own luck by doing those things at the right time.
The book that I wrote was Jump on the Train. Okay? My publisher didn't like the title. I said, but that's what it was like. That's what it
Mm.
was. When you see something, you have to jump on the train. And you got to take it to the end. The end is completion, the end is success. Okay? Now, you're going to have a lot of bumps on that train where you're going to want to get off the train. But basically, you got to see it to the end. And I'm happy with the title.
Yeah, I like the title. I think that's great. I think when you created this design for the leisure suit, did you have this intuition that you knew like this could be really the thing? What kept you on the train for that?
It kept me on the train for that. I didn't know. First of all, with the answer to the question that you just asked, it became a 9 to 5 type thing, meaning I was working regularly. I was working 12 to 12, but it was like I was working regularly.
Mm.
I couldn't stop because of when you get involved in what it turned out to be, it was all encompassing, took over everything. But repeat your question or the second part of it.
Like how you knew to stay on the train once you got on it there. And I guess you kind of answered it by it being all encompassing. I think that's kind of a way that you know that I guess I know from past things I've done, I feel like it was either a failure or it didn't work out the way I wanted. In hindsight, it's kind of obvious because it never got to a point where it was so all encompassing that there was just things happening that had to be dealt with all the time. And the areas where I was more successful, it did feel like that, where like you're put into it, and then it just keeps growing. You can't not give it the attention almost.
I would have to say, this is me now. I always take it to the end. Even when it stops becoming profitable, you don't know if it's going to be up. You never know until the end if it's profitable. Obviously, you plan for it, but those plans change sometimes daily. The solar farm was a 4-year fight, literally a 4-year fight, like a David and Goliath fight. Because I had the community against me, I had the government against me, I had the building area, the departments against me. Everybody was against me. And it made no sense. It made no sense whatsoever. Because this was the best use of the property. And nobody ever, no, to this day, no one ever sees it. No one sees this solar farm. It's totally surrounded by forest. And the amount of shenanigans that went on to try and stop me were amazing. And I have a problem because I can't give up. So I stayed with it for as long as I stayed with it. That's true of other projects too. My
Well, I
partner.
think it's maybe a problem, but it's also a good trait to have.
Um, yeah, I guess it is. I mean, I guess being so stubborn is not so bad. I don't do
So
it personally,
in
though. It's only
what was
business.
that?
I don't do it personally.
That's good. So you're renowned for your real estate success as well. I guess maybe the Bowery Hotel being one of the things you're most well known for in that. Could you walk us through like the hotel development, and were there any critical maybe decisions that stand out that you had to make that went against kind of conventional logic in the industry?
Well, first of all, this was the Bowery. Okay, in the Bowery Hotel, it was not chic area. It was actually the worst area in the city. So that's against convention right there. To even consider doing something. I didn't originally plan to do a hotel. The project was going to be a residential, dormitory, and parking and retail. So we'd have all those uses. The residential be on top, the dormitory be in the middle, and then be retail, and then parking. And I was building that. I literally built 17 stories with that in use. Now, I built the structure, but I hadn't done the inside. So, do you know the restaurant Balthazar? There's a
No, I
restaurant
don't.
called Balthazar. It's an old restaurant. It's very, it's French, and and I was sitting there with my wife, and there was this type of thing. You walk in, you're face to face, next person's face to face. So there are
Hmm.
two guys next to me talking, and my wife got very upset because I was listening to them. I wasn't listening to her. And they were talking about the Bowery. And they were talking about a project they wanted to do in the Bowery. So where I did an economic project with 3 uses that I mentioned, they were talking about a condominium project. So it hadn't started yet, but they were talking. And it dawned on me that I had the best location on the Bowery because you saw the building just as you came to the Bowery, and it just dwarfs everything else.
Mm.
And I said to myself, I'm going to make it a hotel. And that's how that started. I went and found some really good hotel people. I mean, like the best in the industry. And they made all the right moves, and I benefited from it.
Yeah, it's great. So, but I'm curious with that as well. Was there anything like was it a very clear vision from that moment of what you would turn it into, or was that kind of evolving?
No, as soon as I found the right people, there was no stopping. And it turned into be what what it is. I trust me, I never expected that. I never expected leisure suit. I never expect these things. Just what were you saying before about?
So, well, what would if somebody wants to try to replicate that then? If they want to reach this level of success with different things like you have, what advice would you give to them in order to do that? In this case, was it the right people in place or something else?
Only a few times have I had the right people in place. Much of it was just doing it, okay, myself. I shouldn't say that. I say most of the time I had a good staff. That's different than the right people. A good staff is essential. But then you also have to have partners who are good because they're vested. As long as someone is vested into the project, they're gonna take it like you're gonna take it. So that's one aspect. And you got to sell the idea. If you have an idea, I went to a few different hotel people who thought I was crazy, right? And you got to sell it. You got to sell basically that the concept that you're talking about makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody has to figure that out for their own business, whatever it is, because you don't only have to eventually sell it to a customer that's going to buy it, but everybody else along the way, like your team, your any partners, anybody else involved, they all have to buy into that in order to help it move forward.
By the way, partners can be a drizzler. A project can carry you while it's being done because of your partners.
Mm. How's that?
The investment into the project should include you or can include you. Most investors won't like that, but then they're not they're not your investor.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I think personally myself, I haven't raised uh, any investments for my product. I'm kind of aiming to try to do it myself and stick to be able to do it exactly the way that I want to do it if I can, not have outside pressure. But yeah, if I did raise money, I would want it to be that way, that they're investing in me as well, that
When you
allows
do
me
it
to not
yourself,
have to worry about things.
when you do it yourself, like you're talking about, bring it to a point. You can always bring in investors. You can always, when you have something to invest in, you got to have the vision, and you got to relate that vision to those people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you've got clearly a ton of experience in business and negotiation and communication, despite living with dyslexia. What would be your advice for newer entrepreneurs on how to handle difficult decisions and negotiations?
Never show weakness in a negotiation. Never show weakness. Never show that you need it, even though you do need it. Okay? First, if so, you got to sell. You have to continue to sell. I mean, even in a negotiation, you have to sell what you're negotiating about. But you never show that you really need it, because then you lose the negotiation.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Because once they see that weakness, then they can just stick on that against you,
No,
and
then the
it's pretty
negotiation
hard to
on their
fight back, right?
side. They have the
Yeah,
negotiation. You have to take what they're going to offer, and you don't have to take it, but they're not going to go beyond that.
yeah, exactly.
It's a give and take.
So
No,
your new
no
book, Jump on the
negotiation.
Train.
Yeah,
Yeah, what was that?
no negotiation is the same. Every negotiation.
Mm,
There's no book on how to negotiate. There may be books, but I haven't read them. Um, every negotiation is different. Consider that you
yeah,
negotiate
I
with your
think
wife. What?
what I learned from my dad that I feel was really helpful is he was a salesman, and he would tell me how he really was against like the idea of role playing as a salesperson, for training and things like that, because every single time is different. You can't expect that because somebody said this, now this is always the thing that you're going to say next. Every single thing is going to be different.
Every time.
So really the way to practice is just by continuously doing it.
You're right. Or you get better in negotiation as time goes on. I mean, we'll stop negotiating.
Yeah, it's great. So your new book, Jump on the Train, is just launched in February. What inspired you to write that in the first place, and what do you hope readers will take away from it?
It was the COVID period. I was home alone with my wife for over a year. She had written a short story, a short memoir about a trip she took. And I wrote it and I read it, and it was good. And she said, "You should write a short story." I said, "No, I'm writing a book." That's the bravado in me, right? I had to do that.
Mhm.
And then for a year, I sat at a typewriter and wrote this book. I started out, as I said, writing it, or maybe I didn't say, writing it for my kids and my grandkids. Of course, telling them who Poppy was and what he did or whatever. Um, and then I started reading it. As I was writing it and reading it, I was seeing things for the first time. It started to become really exciting. And each chapter, which is a different project, um, took on a whole different meaning to me. And I sent a chapter or two over to friends to read, and they said it was good. And then I continued. Then I got an assistant who worked with me, and then we produced the book. I got a publisher, and that's the book. Should I leave it up a
Nice.
long time?
No, they're good. So I want to talk now about how before we hit record here, you were mentioning to me some of these things that you're passionate about now, and I think it would be interesting for people to hear because I think maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that some people have the misconception that they see someone like yourself who has been very successful in all these things, and they think, oh, well, now you're just sitting on the beach or something, and you don't have these passions or anything. It's done, it's over now. But to me, it's clear you're still very passionate about these different things. So like you made the book, you didn't have to make this book, and now you mentioned to me some of what your goals are going forward. Can you share some more about that?
Well, first, let me talk about another product because I have you here and whoever else there.
Sure.
And I've been showing it since it began. This is a product that I developed. Okay. This is a watch band for the iWatch. I have been, by the way, I have failed at least 2 times trying to make something for Apple because I actually find myself very related to Apple because what it gave me all these years. So this is just a simple watch band, but it also it also stands up, so you can put it on a table and read the time at night with being charged. And it slips on, and it comes in colors and sizes, and it's just a cute item that I did patent because this world is not easy. And if they know I'm in it, they know that they're going to have a fight if they try and copy it. So that's one. But that's not the important one. I would like to start a movement among the American people. This sounds grandiose, and it's come to me in the last couple of weeks because our government is really screwed up. For us to let Ukraine lose this war is one of the biggest mistakes America has ever made. And we're talking about a war that had we jumped in properly in earlier, we would have not had this problem. So what I'd like to do is start raising money. I've never done that before. I've never gone out and asked for money. So I'm asking your people who are watching this, tell me how to do it. Let's contribute to basically securing democracy.
Yeah, so this is interesting that you mentioned that having never done that before for starting a movement. But I think like a lot of my customers in our audience here, they're trying to build like an online community or something like that. But at the same time, people might say, okay, well, what about the leisure suit? Like, is that not a movement? What's the difference between what you want to start now and what you did before? What do you feel that you have to do differently or that you don't know?
I'm not involved, and I've never been involved in the media. I've never, this whole internet craze that's gone on and grown and continues to grow, I've just never done. So I don't know it. I never raised money in the projects that I've done other than bringing in a few partners.
It's very interesting to see how clear it is from you, this passion and desire to figure out the things that you care about. How can you see them through into becoming a reality? And I think that very clearly stands out. I've got one more question for you. And that is, on the show, we like to have every guest ask a question to our audience. So if you could ask our audience anything, whether something you're curious about, something you want to kind of get them thinking about, what would that be?
It has to deal with the last subject. I want you to think of what I just said. I want you to really think and talk to people and spread this craziness around. I know people are talking about it. A movement to tell our government to spend the money or a movement to raise the money. Doesn't have to happen.
Right.
Is that the
Yeah,
right?
well, thanks so much, Jerry, for sharing that with us. Before we get going, I want to ask, where can people find you online?
Jumponatrain.com. Also, Gerald Rosengarten, LinkedIn.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much, Jerry.
Okay, my pleasure, Guy. Thank you.